The house in the darkness. It started as a dare, they always do. Jacob and his friends stood before the old abandoned house at the edge of town, its windows like hollow eyes staring into the night. The legend was simple. No one who stepped inside after midnight ever returned the same. Whispers spoke of shadows that moved on their own, voices that called from the darkness, and something watching. The air was thick with damp rot as they pushed the door open. It creaked, echoing through the vast emptiness inside. The moment Jacob stepped in, a chill crawled up his spine. The floorboards groaned under their weight, but something else, something unseen, seemed to move with them. "Just old wood settling," Liam muttered, though his voice lacked confidence. Then the whisper came, low, breathless, right behind them. Jacob turned sharply. Nothing, only dust swirling in the faint moonlight filtering through cracked windows. They pressed forward, past, peeling wallpaper and broken furniture, until they reached the hallway. At the end stood a door slightly ajar. "Let's check it out," whispered Emily. Jacob hesitated but followed. The room was empty except for a single wooden chair in the center. On it sat a doll, its porcelain face cracked, its eyes hollow. The door suddenly slammed shut behind them, and then the whispers grew louder. They came from the walls, the floor, the ceiling, rising into a chorus of inhuman voices. The air turned frigid, the shadows in the corners deepened, stretching toward them. Then the doll's head moved. Its eyes, empty seconds ago, were now filled with something. Alive. It grinned. Jacob screamed. The last thing he saw before the darkness swallowed him whole was the doll standing up. The next morning the house was silent. The door creaked open on its own, and the doll sat back on the chair, waiting for the next visitor. In the black house. It was the only house on the street with no lights, no warmth, just a silent, looming presence that seemed to watch. Ethan had heard the stories, how people who entered never spoke about what they saw, how some never left at all. But curiosity is louder than fear. The front door was unlocked. It swung open with a slow, painful groan. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the silence pressed against his ears. The house smelled of damp wood, and something faintly metallic. The floor creaked beneath his steps as he moved deeper inside. Then a whisper, soft, faint. His name. Ethan froze. "Hello?" he called out, but his voice felt small in the vast emptiness. From the hallway, a shadow shifted. It wasn't the flicker of a curtain or a trick of the light. It moved, deliberate, slow, aware. He wanted to turn back, wanted to run, but something pulled him forward. At the end of the hallway was a door. It opened before he touched it. Inside was a single chair facing the wall. The air in the room was different, heavier, charged. And then the whisper came again. Closer. Right. Behind him, Ethan turned. The hallway was empty, but the door he had just walked through was now closed. A cold breath touched his neck. The lights flickered, and the chair, empty just seconds ago, was now occupied. A woman sat there, her back to him. Long, tangled hair draped over her shoulders. Her fingers, thin and unmoving, gripped. The arms of the chair she didn't turn, but in the reflection of the window, Ethan saw her face, pale, hollow, and grinning. The lights went out, and Ethan was never seen again. It breathed. The house had been abandoned for years, yet every night neighbors swore they heard something moving inside. A shuffle, a breath, a quiet knock. Liam didn't believe in ghosts. He didn't believe in curses, but he did believe in proving people wrong. Armed with a flashlight and an old camera, He pushed open the rusted gate. The wind howled through the broken windows as if the house itself was exhaling. Inside, the air was thick, heavy, like stepping into another world. Dust coated every surface, but the footprints in the hallway weren't his. Liam swallowed hard. Just the house settling, he told himself. Then a whisper from upstairs. His fingers tightened around the flashlight. He wasn't alone. The wooden stairs groaned under his weight as he climbed, each step slower than the last. The hallway was lined with doors, all closed, except for one. The door at the end stood slightly open, revealing nothing but darkness inside. A shuffling sound. Something moved. Liam held his breath and stepped closer. He reached for the doorknob, and before he could touch it, it slammed shut. The flashlight flickered, and then from behind him a voice. Low, breathy. "You shouldn't be here." Liam spun around, but the hallway was empty. The air had turned freezing. His breath came out. In visible puffs, the whisper came again, closer, and then he heard it. Breathing. Not his own. Slow. Deep. Right behind him. The flashlight died. The last thing Liam felt was ice-cold fingers wrapping around his wrist. The next morning, the house stood empty once again. But now, 2 sets of footsteps echoed in the hall at night.